this with the same company, CSL. Another key performer in the plasma switchways is actually Octapharma. You can see Newick in the kind of the, I don't know what you would describe that color. Sorry, but it's the light, the rose color, like light rose. They are performing pretty well with with capturing the plasma switchaways. They've captured some every quarter, and they continue to in Q3.
Yeah, but I think we have to be careful with this here because these are just 7 patients, and 14% is the one patient now. So everybody gets one patient, but a style of 3. So
correct. Yeah, there's no projection here. This is, I mean, basically the sample from which this was taken was over a third of the patients. So I mean, a very quick, soft calculation on the true impact would be to multiply this by 3 or so, 3 to 4. But you're right. They are small numbers overall, and it's more of the proportions that we're trying to get at. We're deliberately not projecting these just to show exactly the data, the raw data. What do we get? And you're actually right. There's only 7, right? Which is the decline from its peak in Q1, where there were over 10. But still within that, CSL and Styla was I guess the major trend break in Q3, where they captured more and certainly captured more share of that 7. You're right.
Right. I think this is an interesting quote we picked up to wrap up Germany here, and it absolutely fits to the message we got yesterday from Germany that there happened. I would say a win in the court against Sobi, and this is referring to what's happening here.
Right. So this quote is again, this is unsolicited. They just simply go off on some of the suppliers, and there has often been pretty negative commentary and quotes on Sobi. This one was a little bit more on the oomph factor, and this director said that I've told the rep they're not allowed to come to my department anymore. I think their tactics are far too aggressive. They did a patient survey, or so they claimed, that showed more than 50% or maybe 2/3 of their patients wanted to switch to long-acting. And they showed statistics that the majority of the patients feel uninformed by their physician. And this took him or her off. This is just unacceptable. It's unacceptable that a patient organization is collaborating like this with a manufacturer, and it's unacceptable for Sobi to approach patients like that. Sobi wanted to give a donation to an organization I'm involved in, and we simply turned it down. They're just far too aggressive. In Germany, this approach is counterproductive, and I'm certainly not the only doctor who feels this way.
Okay, so as a consequence, the institute feels that funding should be given to the institute, but not to the patient organization.
Yes.
Okay. Understood.
Okay. Anyway, that was a lot of material. We are past the time. I know it took a little bit longer, and we do absolutely have some important takeaways in France we need to get to. Is there anything, Klaus and the rest of the team, that we should focus on, or any questions before we move on to France?
Simone, will you ask the question when? Or yeah, go ahead.
Since I'm quite new in the field, I'm not aware exactly how the data are collected with Adivo. So I was wondering, when these are Q3 data, when do you interview the physicians? Is it in Q4? You interview them in Q4 to get data on Q3? Because I was wondering if the workshop that is mentioned really the Henovision workshop, because that was in November. And
right. Great question. It is in Q4, so we have to wait until the quarter ends, and it's throughout Q4 that we do the interviewing. Which it would be helpful. We could go back to that quote and ask. However, there's a risk of, look, if we ask specifics about there, we don't want to tip our hand. So I would probably recommend not, but if it's important, please let us know, and we could.
No, it's not that important. I just
okay.
You could let us know what day this interview was undertaken, because that was
absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was pretty helpful.
Okay.
Let's move on to France.
Thank you. Okay. So the French market, excuse me, on slide slide 21. Gosh, one moment. So, slide 21 is on a summary of some of the positive market takeaways in France. The drivers are going to be spoken about in relative terms. There's a lot of challenges, as we know, in the French market. There's no shortage of them. And so when we talk about market drivers or key positive takeaways, it's on a relative basis. And these are some of the key ones are some here in slide 21. First of all, Alapta, its PTP switch gains dropped, notably in Q3, at least compared to the prior quarters, right? Now, Alapta's share still shot up in Q3. Its volume share, I think it hit 23% or over 23%. But the significant thing about its switch gains slowing is that this typically portends or forecasts a slowing of volume share the next quarter, right? The switches happen within the quarter, and it's really the volume accumulation that happens in the next full quarter, right? So if this portends correctly, there should be a greater plateauing of Alapta's volume share in the following quarter. But just in terms of switch gains, they dropped considerably in Q3 17. We also certainly found reports of more switchbacks, and we have some slides that go into how many and where did they go to and things of that nature. Cavaltry, the second point here, led the market in net switch gains in Q3. The key word here is net, and that is because Cavaltry, we didn't capture any Cavaltry switchbacks with our raw data report. So they were all Coach to Cavaltry switches, as well as some helixate to Cavaltry switches and a smaller number of factane to Cavaltry switches. I think there might have been also some refracted way up to Cavaltry. But overall, Cavaltry's switch pattern was all gains, mostly from Cogent, also some external, and with no reported switchbacks, these net gains were actually slightly higher than Alapta in the quarter. A qualitative point that I do want to spend at least a little bit of time on, and this is the third point here, several physicians cited they termed, we're not terming this. This is not Devo's term of a missed opportunity. This is the physician's terminology of a missed opportunity for gains, or at least better consideration with Cavaltry. And essentially what the physicians have said is that they really believe that Cavaltry could have been considered more for some of these Alapta switches if two things were emphasized more. On one hand, some physicians wanted it to be promoted or wished it was more promoted as having a longer half-life. Obviously not necessarily a quote-unquote EHL, but a longer-acting profile so that it could be considered more actively with some of the rampant, short-acting to Alapta switches that were simply just done wholesale almost in some of the centers. And then also, I think it's significant is that Bear's home delivery service, Bear's home delivery service is really continues to be perceived as an advantage. We didn't prompt on this, but it's just something that comes up in the interviews, and some of these folks said, just point blank, that this is really an advantage. For example, Sobi is still working with the centers to try to fashion their own home delivery service that's a little bit different, but Bear uses this blank external company and is set up and works well. This is really an advantage for convenience, and it should be emphasized more. Last but not least, on the positive or the positive key market takeaways in slide 21 is Factane and its continuing decline in share. It dropped to its historical low the last 2 quarters, and this is because LFB continues to have supply issues with Factane, which has fueled more switchaways. Now, most of these are going to Alapta, also to Octanate, which is really the only other plasma consideration in France, but also some of them, a smaller portion to Cavaltry. Thanks. Slide 22.
Dan, would you like to comment here? In line with your view on the market at the moment.
Slightly, well, it seems to be in line with what we're message recall. In this particular case, I'm disappointed to see that we're not highlighting enough the PK advantage of Kowalski. So, but I do see a pretty significant disconnect between this and the market research we just reviewed. So, market research was, I think, Q4. So let's hope that Q4 Adivo data will reflect that as well.
You're absolutely right. And I don't feel this disconnect because this is just a single statement and the message recall is broader. So I believe in the message recall data, Letizia presented so nicely. And if we look at the recent in-market data from GERD, we absolutely confirm the trend we picked up. So congratulations. I just calculated and I see a slight indicator for turnaround turn.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it seems to have taken a positive, well, at least a neutral turn. So hopefully we can sustain that and improve.
Keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah, I mean,
like it could be the beginning of one, so that's great. Good. Ryan?
Okay, slide 22. It's the same type of top-down summary on some of the key challenges, key negative constraints and takeaways. Overall, interestingly, the overall factor VIII volume contracted, in Q3 17. So we look at, recombinant plus plasma, and it's the first negative, I think, in years, in perhaps in many years. The recombinant market was essentially flat, grew just marginally, which also is a different trend, okay, compared to the 3% or 4% growth it's averaged. And plasma was down like 15 to 20%. So the overall factor VIII volume contraction was interesting. One of the things we believe is behind it, we're not stating this as a fact. One of the things we think is behind it is just Elocta's growing influence. Namely, the fact that Elocta has got up to a third, sorry, I got a little bit of an echo, up to a third or more of its patients on a reduced infusion schedule. And this is not an insignificant number of patients. I mean, Elocta's volume share is 23%. Its patient share of prophylaxis is higher than that. And if you get a third of those on a reduced infusion schedule, there is going to be, or there should be, some sort of overall impact in terms of volume growth deceleration. Well, anyway,
a question on that, because maybe it's a technical question of how you capture and correlate that with this information, because even though patients are on reduced infusion schedules with lactate, what we've also heard in other markets is that the overall consumption on a same basis, like a weekly basis, is actually not less than and sometimes greater than what they were consuming before on a standard active product. So I want to make sure we're connecting that up a little bit.
That's great. So this is exactly the point that I was Ryan before, and what I see. So Elocta is pretty fresh to the market, and we see the huge number of patients on Elocta is considerable that they maybe use a small consumption now, and after all they see that this is not enough, and they step up with higher doses. And what I see, I looked to the SKUs, the 3,000 vials increasing from 30% to 36%. So this could mean, looking forward, that the consumption or the market will rebalance and increase again in the future. So
what we presented late October, so it would be beginning of October, so it would be the same time frame. To add more the latest GEF data, which showed exactly that the shrinking market, it's been shrinking for a few quarters from that data set. And we had the question why, and their point of view was that it was not necessarily an Elocta effect to Joe's point. In some instances, they had to up the dose even if they reduce frequency because to prevent bleed. So they feel that the number of clinical trials that are currently being run as an effect of the market. So it might be a combination, but it's an interesting point of view too.
Right. So I appreciate the commentary. Our pointing out of Elocta is not in the spirit of this is what we know is going on. This is what we believe is a factor. And to give us a little bit of commentary on the comparisons to other countries, we absolutely see that in the U.S. and in Germany and others that Elocta consumption is basically on par overall or only slightly less. Okay, but there's a difference between the U.S. and Germany and France. In the U.S. and both the U.S. and Germany, the type of switching absolutely did not involve the frequency of regimen infusion reduction as in France. Certainly not in Germany, but also in the U.S. Right, and the number of physicians that are going from 3 times a week to twice a week, but also increasing the dose from 50 IU to 70 IU, that's not the majority. We have data on that as well. There are a lot of these guys that are just simply going, well, okay, let's Elocta's, in vogue here. I'm going to switch a bunch of my patients, and we're going to twice a week, 50 IU per kg, we'll start on. And because it's been switched by so many, I mean, it's over a quarter of the patients that, yes, we do think, I think, or at least I would hypothesize, this is absolutely having an influence. I would also bet that breakthrough bleeding, switch-aways, adjustments are bound to happen because we know that this doesn't work from other countries.
Yeah, but
there's an effect, an impact.
Twice a week, that's 100 IUs a week. How different is that from a standard acting regimen?
Well, they could be using Advate at 45 or 50 3 times a week, so it's a third less.
Yeah, for Advate, yes, but when it comes in for long duration. Yeah, I mean, we can do the math, but that could be a big difference for Advate.
Yeah.
Is that high for 40 IUs? So in market, so from the Canadian data, we know that Elocta is used on a weekly consumption, absolutely comparable to Quadri, and it's below 100. It's around 90 watts.
Now, to which data are you referring to? So, do you have data on the level of injection?
Yes, I sent you the data. This is a Metrihem survey we did in patients.
Yeah.
And there we have some data on the consumption. And you always have to look at the age groups and the total. So I think we should, and yeah, we should go on. Yeah.
Okay. A couple of there are certainly other points here. So again, that was just a hypothesis, and we absolutely do see reasons to be thinking about the French market different than the U.S. and Germany because we know they're being switched differently, at least right now, for Elocta. But to move on, NovaWeight continues to be one of the other brands that's actually gaining consistently quarter on quarter within the switch market. And one of the things that we saw in Q3 was NovaWeight sourcing more from Cognate in the period. Most of NovaWeight's recent gains have been from Pfizer, Refacto AF, oftentimes with site switches, right, where they're going in with some very aggressive offer, and that's contingent on the sites switching all or half of their Refacto patients. We also saw more Cognate to NovaWeight switches in Q3 17. So that's why that is highlighted here. Average prices in France continue to fall, as we know, in Q3 17, so that's the third point. I think more importantly, though, is some of the intel we picked up on what's happening, at least with some of the sites in terms of their 2018 tendering, and that's the fourth point here. Novo and Octapharma driving further downward pressure with very low tender offers for 2018. In fact, from some of the large centers, we know that they have switched for 2018, so it doesn't show up in these results, but they have switched a lot of patients to Newick and NovaWeight, literally going down to 40 euro cents is what these guys who won the tender went down to. So that is completely different obviously a continuation of the downward trend in average price, but to a different level. 40 euro cents is, obviously quite a bit different than where the market is currently at. So again, these results are not in the Q3 data, but they're coming from physicians, frankly directors, that shared their tender results with us. They, for example, in this case, they just got back their results at the end of the year, and they told us that, look, I don't know who you're reporting to, but you can't make it public to anyone until January 1st. Well, it's now after January 1st, and here it is. Octapharma and Newwick, at least with some sites, very, very aggressive pricing offerings and tender wins for 2018.
And these are tenders, just to make it very clear. So different from Germany, this is not site negotiation, this is direct tender, right?
Well, it depends on what we mean by tender. These guys call their own sites a tender. They put out a tender, right? I don't know if this is a regional tender or, to my knowledge, this is an HTC tender. These are not regional tenders. They call them that. So, yeah.
And we now have very few individual hospitals, so it's probably a small group.
Okay.
But Daniel, it's Susanne here. One question. We just heard that patients are switched, or a lot of patients are switched to these low price products, and we still have, let's say, compared to what is reported here, pretty high prices. So how does it work? Because we do have different lots in the tenders. Are we then also losing patients, or do we keep our share in these tenders? How do we foresee that then for the future?
It depends. If we're lucky enough to not win in a market where we didn't have patients, then we're not so penalized. But the last two examples, in one of them we had 6 or 8 patients and we lost them. So that means that all of a sudden we're set back and we need to gain more patients to reestablish neutrality. So it's an ongoing battle.
So we are now also considering that the tenders are getting really competitive. So it's, despite being in different lots, we are really competing one against the other.
Well, the thing is that this different lot approach is seriously being compromised because they're reducing the number of products that they are carrying. So you don't necessarily get, well, I want a recombinant factor rate, with HSP17 technology anymore. You get, I want a recombinant factor rate, a standard acting, and they list 2 or 3 of them instead of all of them.
And Daniel, do you have a map of which hospitals and the percentage of the business that comes from that portion?
We have a very complicated spreadsheet, but we do know, yes.
Okay. Last but not least, just a qualitative point on Hemlibra. Several centers are talking with Roche about setting up an ATU cohort to get access to patients prior to marketing authorization. Okay, if we could please go to slide 23.
Just watch.
Can I confirm that? I can envision an ATU for inhibitor patients, not for non-inhibitor patients.
This
patient groups that aren't well treated. That's my understanding of the AT system, but
it's to where there's no therapeutic alternative. So I would agree with you, Joe. Yeah.
Right. I believe they were talking about the inhibitor patients, which is of course going to be the first approval. But we have some quotes that are on that. Correct. Slide 23 is on the French market, just quantitative year-over-year scorecard. Same idea where we kept recombinant and plasma volume on top, the brand shares scoring on bottom. If we look at the brand share performance or scorecard, if you will, you can see that Elocta at essentially 23%, nearly 23% volume in Q3 17. actually 23% volume, Q3 17 up, essentially that. Bear continues to be down, as everyone is down. All legacy are down. Bear was down less than both CSL and Shire, if we compute all the scores. And the other suppliers, so the only other brands that are increasing are the third-tier ones, Novaweight and Newick, both of which are up essentially close to 1 point year over year.
Okay, I ask one question, because our colleagues have to jump into another meeting, and they're very interested to see the picture for the switchbacks in Elocta. Could you please do this first, and then if somebody has a little bit more time, go to the other side.
Slide 24 is on Elocta's switch pattern, and the bottom of it has the switch gains and the switch backs. Okay, so slide 24. These data, keep in mind, these are not projected. Okay, this is we capture patients from, I think it's about 40% of the market. These are raw data captures. Okay, and you can see on top the switch gains, and then on the bottom the switch backs. Okay, couple of points. First, the switch gains, as I talked about, significantly decelerated. Elocta switch gains peaked in Q1 and Q2, and then its gains basically declined to the same point in Q3 as it did in Q4. And then at the same point in time, the switch away, so the switch backs increased. Those went in, sorry, I'm getting a little bit of an echo, but those went in Q3 to Advate, half of them to Advate. Helixate, interestingly, captured several of these. So these were Helixate to Elocta switches that switch right back to Helixate.
Yeah.
Right. And then you can see that the others are Factane and Refacto-AF. Slide 25 is on just the overall patient rates for Elocta. Basically, we have seen just raw data capture. We captured 13 switchbacks between quarters. Incidentally, this is not a within quarter switchback. Between quarters, we've had 13 overall patients switch back. Most of these were in Q3 17, where there were 8 of them. In terms of what this translates into in patient rates, they're in the little bubble there. The switchback rate for example, in Q3 17 was just under 4%. In other words, just under 4%, 3.7% of Elocta's patient base switched back. Yeah. Okay. And you can see beneath these diagrams where the switchbacks went to. Okay, if there's any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, I know we only have a couple of minutes. The remaining slides are on some of the switch patterns and the market share patterns, and I can go through those, or we can take any questions or points. Okay,
we're obviously getting the slides, so I think we're okay.
Good. Anything in terms of feedback from the team that would assist my team when we're collecting? We're launching on our interviews right now. Obviously, there's a lot going on. If there's anything that comes up that you think or anyone thinks might be helpful in terms of pointing the arrow in the right direction or gathering more valuable intel, if you could let me know or let us know afterwards, we'd be happy to look at incorporating.
Absolutely. And if I just ask you if we could find something which is related to the German codes about the failed ITI, so the relapse on inhibitors in Elocta, this could be helpful because we have so many patients in France already that maybe we are able to capture them.
Right. We can ask. I think it's
so just keep your ears open.
Okay, sure. Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody, and have a nice weekend. Ryan, we will speak next week on Tuesday. I'm really looking forward to the report.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.